Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Francesca. It's your girl, Francesca. Today we're going to be talking about the act of communicating in raising children. So we want to talk about how to be effective in having conversations, discussing with our children, irrespective of what their ages are, making sure that they are hearing you, that they are listening, that they're responding appropriately to what you're saying to them. I read an article recently, and the article basically talked about the fact that about 55% of conversation that we have um, is represented by body language, 38% is by tone, and the 7% is what is attributable to words. So really, 100% that makes up the conversation, 55% from that is basically your body language. So your mannerism, what you're saying, how you're saying it, that's what embodies the 55%. And then the 38% is based on your tone, your pitch, how some words are said, how you're pronouncing something, to probably give emphasis or something to stretch something. That takes a whooping 38%. And then the words that come out of your mouth is just 7%. Okay, so today we want to see what should we be doing differently, how should we be doing it, what should we be telling our children, or how should we be speaking with them. Something that I recently learned and I'm trying to also put into practice is the fact that when you're having, you want to have that effective conversation with your child, you're trying to make sure that you're not talking to them. You're basically speaking with, so you're not talking at them, like just throwing words at them. You're trying to have that conversation, that back and forth conversation with your child. So let's talk about what communication is. What defines communication? At what point will I say that I've actually been communicating with this person? So communication is the act of passing and receiving information. So Mr. A is saying something, Mr. B is listening, receiving it, and responding appropriately to that conversation. Of course, we know that there are different kinds of communication. There are different types. You're speaking. It can be by email. It can be verbal. It can be non-verbal. Really. So you want to make sure that whichever form you're using, you're being effective. You're being effective. One of the reasons I decided to speak about this is because prioritizing effective communication, for us as parents is a way that we lay down the very groundwork, for raising and nurturing wholesome adults. You know, so you're basically setting them for success in every area of life. So when you've been effective in having conversations with your children grow up, they're very confident, they can talk to anyone. Have you seen children that when you approach them and you're telling them, they're very confident? I think it's very prevalent in this part of the world. Children here are very confident. They are not afraid to tell you what they think. They're not afraid to tell you how they feel about what you've said. Unlike where we're from, where you can't confront your parents, really. You can't respond to what you're being told in the manner that you want to respond. And while I'm not endorsing rudeness, I'm not saying that children should respond rudely or say something in a rude manner, to their parents or people in that position of parenting them, giving them instructions, nurturing them. It's important also that they are able to say how they feel and that they are heard when they say what they feel and how they feel. Okay? It's important that they are heard and that they say exactly what they feel and how they feel. So there are some factors to consider. There are some factors to consider. when you're exchanging information, you want to consider the age of the child. You want to consider how developed that child is emotionally. You want to consider the environment, in which that conversation is being had, or that information is being passed. You want to make sure that whatever it is that you're telling that child, it's something that they can jump on and use. you know you're not telling them something beyond their level of understanding or their age, or something that they can use in the next immediate, not necessarily immediately. They have to take time to process it. It will take a while before they understand exactly what you're saying. So you want to make sure that whatever information you're passing across, you're doing it in bit sizes. When they say that when you want to feed a child, you don't feed them large chunk of meals, okay? You make it into the size that can fit into their mouth, so that they can chew it, swallow it, and just be able to process that food. It's the same thing with conversations and the informations that we pass. You want to make sure that whatever you're giving to your child is age appropriate. You want to make sure that that communication is something that they can understand. Now, be careful when you think about age appropriate conversations. You don't want to have conversations with somebody, or let's say, for instance, you're having conversations with your child that is a teenager, and you are the parent. You know that based on the age of my child, yes, he or she is a teenager in terms of their age, but in terms of emotional intelligence development, they're not there yet. You don't want to give them information overload. You don't want to give them things that they will not be able to understand or process. So you want to give them something that at that time they can understand it, okay? At that time they can understand it. Of course, I've said that communication is the very foundation for stronger relationships. It's not just a means to have better conversation or great conversations that we say it's great to have great conversations. And I know I'm stretching that, because it's actually good to have good conversations, be able to talk to somebody, be able to have, talk to them in a way that you would enjoy the conversation. There are some conversations you have, or there's some information you exchange with somebody, and when they're responding to you, you're wondering to yourself, this is off tangent. This is off what we're talking about. This is completely out of point. Of course, beyond having those great conversations, beyond having those conversations that you would tell yourself that you thoroughly enjoy, you also want to be that building block, okay, for building strong and effective relationships in future. That's what you want to do. So I also know that parents are busy, especially in this part of the world. Not only are you doing your regular 9 to 5, you're doing a regular 9 to 5. Some parents are schooling full time. So it takes away the time that they may or may have created for the child to be able to talk effectively, have an understanding of what's going on. So it's important that even as busy as we are as moms, dads, create a 5 minutes, a 10 minutes, create that time to have that conversation. And I am stretching conversation, because really children want that time with their parents. They want to know that there's somebody at home that will listen to them. They always want to know that there's someone at home that understands, exactly what they've been through during the day. They also want somebody that they can talk to in terms of what's happening at school, what's happening with friends. How do I do this for children that are getting to the stage where they are thinking about career? They want to be able to sound off their ideas with their parents. So it's important that you create 5 minutes, 10 minutes, the drive to school. If your kids are older, you can jump on the call with them. Just have that conversation with them and check in. Regular check-ins are important. And while we are tired, while I will not I will not say that we can get tired. I will not do that. While I acknowledge that we're tired, we're busy, it's just important to just create a little time. Create that time for that child. Create that time for that child. Make sure that you're giving them all that they need, in terms of having conversations with you. You're not just doing, I'm too busy, I don't have time. you know I'm too busy, I don't have time. So whatever it is, I don't have time to do all the back and forth. I just listen, tell you what I think, and then I move on to the very next thing. Some of the significance of effective communication is, you know you help your child develop emotional, you help them get emotional development, so they get to develop emotionally. When you have open communication with your children, they begin to understand what it is to be emotionally intelligent. They take cues from you. They learn from you. One of the best way to teach a child is to model the behavior that you want them to learn. Okay? They learn to identify and express emotions. They learn to understand that, okay, what I've just said, this is not emotionally intelligent. Okay, this is what mommy would have done based on what you've had, what you've spoken with, what you've told them. They understand that this is what they should or would be doing. Then cognitive growth, with this new, I will call it, with this prevalence of different developmental delays, disabilities, neurodiverse conditions. You want to make sure that you're having conversations with your child. One of the very first things that a doctor told me, a pediatric doctor told me, is that you want to make sure that your children are not feeding off screens all the time. And while most parents are on this table and are guilty, me, myself, inclusive, it's important that you win your child off screen, have meaningful conversations with them so that they can develop cognitively. Why is important is when they engage with you, maybe not only you in the house, other people, other members of the family, siblings, friends, they understand, they begin to pick up stuff, they begin to learn. Children learn majorly by imitation. So you don't want them imitating the TV and behaving like Teletubbies. Um, you you help them in terms of social skills. They begin to understand how to play, age appropriate play. They know what to do. They know how to do it. And this is because you are exposing them to meaningful conversations, meaningful play. Okay, you are also building their self-esteem. Watch out for confident children. You'll find out that these are children that have conversations with their parents all the time. It's ongoing. Conversation is open. They are constantly speaking with their parents. Constantly. So they develop to be very confident. Nothing phases them. They see something, they are ready to face it on head on. You want to raise children like that. You also want to raise children that are strong enough to have strong and good relationships, future relationships, beyond having that, strong relationship or whatever with you, your husband, other members of the family. You also want them to be able to nurture a rich relationship with their peers, with their friends, with their colleagues. The only way to do that is to teach them how to be effective in their conversations, in their communication. So one of the other things also that you need to consider, I know I spoke about factors to consider, beyond looking at their age, which is key. I spoke about the fact that you have to look at how emotionally intelligent the child is. You also need to look at the environment, the environment. Sometimes some conversations cannot be had in a certain environment, especially for teenage children. Okay, you are speaking with your teenage child, and maybe they're with their friends, in company of their friends. That's not the time to start dishing out instructions like, oh, get in the car or this or that. They are developing their independence. They are beginning to get to the point where they are recognizing who they are as near adults. Okay, so you want to be careful, when you speak have that conversation with them, speak with them in that manner, they tend to begin to resent you a little bit because they kind of feel like my friends will now think, oh, this is how they talk to him at home. Teens are just building their identity, they're just beginning to understand who they are. So you want to be careful with the kind of things you say to them in the presence of their peers. Okay? Of course, of course, like every other rule, there are exceptions. There are times where you know that you need to scream to get them off danger. You need to scream to get them to the path that they need to go. But try as much as possible to make sure that you're not making them feel like they don't have a say, or their friends are looking down at them. Of course, we know that infants, toddlers, preschoolers, school age children, there's a way you want to talk to them. You're talking to them body language. They're feeding off your body language. If you're smiling, a child is happy. They want you to throw them up. They want you to carry them. If you're frowning, they can take the vibes that this person is angry. And that's why when I talked about that study that spoke about the fact that 55% of communication is body language. 55. So 38% majors on tone. Why 7 is just the words you speak. So you want to be careful what you're passing off. Your body language, what they are sensing, what they are receiving. You want to make sure that you're careful. Teenagers, yeah, I think that's the one I've heard most of when people talk to me about, oh, this child is doing this is this, my teenager is this and that and that and that and that. And sometimes when I have conversations with them, they get to gist with me because they're like, I'm a cool auntie, right? And the reason for that is because I try to hear them. I try to let them tell me everything that they want to see. Tell me about your friend. Tell me about the things you people do. Those secret things that you don't want to tell mom and dad. You can tell me. I will listen. And I will not judge. In fact, the first how many minutes of the conversation, I will just listen with rapt attention, be so interested, no judgment, no comments until you're done. Then I begin to tell you exactly what I think you should have done. If that situation actually warrants you redirecting them and correcting them and pointing them into the next, just point them in the right direction where they need to go. So key strategies to effective communication: active listening, clear and simple language, empathy, and validation. You also want to resist the urge, rather. You want to resist the urge to always want to proffer solutions. I know that parents, once your child tell you anything that is happening, the next thing you want to do is how to fix it. Sometimes you need to let them make their mistakes, okay? Do not fix it, just hear them out. Listen, do not judge, do not interrupt. When they are done, then you can begin to tell them, if I was in this situation, this is what I would have done differently. Of course, this is a learning curve for all of us. We're getting there, we're getting better at this parenting journey. We're learning what we should say and what we shouldn't say. Okay? So you want to make sure that you are doing that. You want to make sure that you're teaching them what they need to know. You're being clear, you're being concise, you're using simple English. Don't throw all the vocabularies that you know at them. Sometimes they don't even understand they don't understand them. Of course, when your children are like maybe young adults, they probably know more than you do. It's a possibility. They probably know more than you do, right? So then you can have engaging conversations with those ones. you know Compromise. You want to do this even with your teenage children. You want to compromise, you want to shift grounds. You don't want to say, oh, absolutely, this is where we are based on what they've told you. This is what we're going to do. There are no middle grounds here. Yes, there are times where you will hold your ground, but let flexibility also guide you when some of this information are being exchanged between yourself and your children. Most importantly, speak with your children and don't talk at them only. Okay, I know we grew up where they just give you instructions and you do them, and sometimes we want to raise our children in like manner, but the times have changed, the world has evolved. Okay, it's a time where you have to unlearn and relearn certain things. It's the time where you have to, shift ground a bit and make sure that whatever it is you're passing across is what they can use. And they as well, when they share stuff with you, try and, you know, listen and put them into practice. Okay, so this week we're going to be doing something new. I know I talked about the fact that we should create time, create time to engage your child, create a 10 minutes routine, 15 minutes to debrief with them. If you can do it daily, fantastic. If you can't and you want to do a weekly schedule, that's good. A friend of mine was sharing with me how herself and her husband would have kind of like a weekly schedule where they take, so this parent A will take the child somewhere, parent B will take the other child somewhere, and then it will be their personal bonding time. They get to share all that has happened in the week. I think they do it on Fridays or thereabouts. They get to share what has happened in the week, what they are struggling with. It's good practice. It doesn't have to be every week. You can just, it's something, just make sure that it's manageable within your schedule. So let's try that this week. Set out a 10 minutes, 15 minutes time in your schedule, debrief with your child, have that conversation, see how that went, and see, the different aspects you want to improve on, whether you need to change some things, what you need to fix, what you need to change, and then come back and give me, feedback, drop your comments, and let's see how we can address some of those questions or queries that you may have. Okay, so this is a convenient point where I will say have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day. If you haven't subscribed, this is my cue to you to do so. If you haven't followed us on any of our social media platforms, please, 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 please go ahead and do so. And thank you for being supportive. I appreciate it. Have a fantastic rest of the day. Take care. Bye.